So I figured we'd start. I know some of you may know each other from previous sessions, but of course I'm new. So I thought just quickly we would do introductions. You can let me know maybe anything you want about yourself or your English background and maybe what you do for work. I get you are all within the same like financial company. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, so I guess I'll start. And so I have on my screen LSBS. Who is that?
OSBS.
Hi, I'm
What's your name?
Chen Yu.
Chunwei.
Or
Okay.
you can call me Jen. Jen. Yeah.
Sorry?
You can call me Jen. Jen.
That works. Cool. Uh, so I'll start real quickly just to introduce myself a little. I am from the US. I've been teaching about 6 years. Four of those were in the US, and then two, I was teaching advanced English in Cambodia for about a year. And then I was teaching in corporations in Poland, focusing on business English, kind of like we'll do with this course. I have a business background as well. So I feel like we'll probably be on the same page in terms of some of the experience there. GU, am I saying that right? Okay. Do you want to just very quickly maybe anything you think I should know?
Okay. My name is Yang Xiyu, and you can call me Jasmine or Jazz.
Okay, cool.
JAS. Yes. And I'm doing the trading in Hong Kong office.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Poe, do you want to go next?
Me?
Sure.
Okay. I'm Powen, and Powen is from Mandarin. Well, my Mandarin name is Bowen, so just call me Powen. And I work in Taipei office, and I'm trader. Doing I don't know, trader doing trade
Sure.
Taiwan index option.
Okay.
And for past about 19 months, I was responsible for night shift trading.
Okay.
But recently I came back to the daytime trading.
Do you prefer the daytime or did you like the night?
I'll say that taking night shift has its there are pros and cons, but if you doing night shift like me for over 1.5 years, you have to sacrifice many social events. Yeah.
Sure.
What kind of social event?
Like often people will like grab a drink at Friday night, but you cannot go.
Okay.
And if your friends want to ask you out on weekends, you have to like adjust your time.
Sure. You get
because
used to yeah, that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome back to
yeah, to daylight. Yeah.
Cool. Kevin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the guy that replaced Poland.
Okay.
I'm now night shift now, and yeah, it's start like last week, so still kind of I'm still adjusting my my biological schedule. So yeah, it's a new experience, and I really enjoy it. But also, I feel like sacrifice a lot for my grab a drink with my friends or dinner time. So yeah, but I think I will get used to it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
oh, I also work in the Taipei office and also trade Taiwanese options.
Okay, great. And
I
there,
don't know what.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Zhenyu. I'm new to this firm. I have joined since April. Yeah, so about 4 months till now. Yeah, and I'm working on researching on data and try to find out new strategies. Yeah. Oh, besides working, I like to go climbing. Yeah, and
Cool.
especially for exploring my own path. Just not going along the road that someone has mapped. I will find out my own road. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I lived in the mountains for a few years in Colorado, and so I did a lot of hiking and climbing things and sport. Great. So I think that's everyone. What I figured we would do today is, well, so I want to give you just a kind of a general sense of how I'll treat the course. I want this to be about you all, and what you want to get from this. So feel free to make suggestions if there are certain topics you'd like to cover. If you're coming in with a kind of a sense of these are some of the words I'd like to work, the vocabulary I'd like to work on, or this would be an interesting topic for us to discuss. Just feel free to let me know. I'm open to suggestions. For today, I have planned. Are you familiar with TED Talks? The
TikToks.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the
Actually,
dumb people thing.
different version of TikTok. One is like Hong Kong version. Another is like the word. I think it's a word version. I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
so-
TikTok is the overseas version, and Douyin is the version in mainland China, right?
Yes. In mainland China is Douyin. I don't know if the Hong Kong version and the mainland version is the same. I don't know about if it is the same. Maybe it's similar, but it's totally different with the other version, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple different, they do local ones, and I don't know if it's different in China, but you understand the format. So, there are discussions usually about either new ideas or kind of exploring an idea a little bit more deeply in a different way. And I found a really interesting one that I wanted to share today, and then we can use that as kind of a launching point for discussion and to address some vocabulary. And anything else that comes to mind. I mean, feel free during the video, if there's a word you don't understand, go ahead and write it down and we can discuss that. Concept that you don't understand, an idea that you're not sure about, feel free to write that down and then we can talk about it. I have some of my own that I've written up just to make sure we have something to talk about. But again, this is for you. So I want you to tell me if there's anything that you don't understand or you want to talk about or whatever. It's up to you. So the video I'll share today, I figured was very relevant. And you probably, for me, this was enlightening. For you, some of this may already be general knowledge. But it's a Chinese American gentleman living in the US who works as an economist. And he's going to discuss the way that the way language structure and language and how we use it plays into our role with saving money and how we look at things. So it's about, it's 12 minutes. It's about 10 minutes, I think, of actual video. And so I'm just going to share my screen. We'll watch that together, and then we'll discuss anything you'd like to discuss. So let me go ahead and let me get this back to the beginning. There we go. Is the volume okay for everyone? Everyone can hear?
So the global economic financial crisis has reignited public interest It's something that's actually one of the oldest questions in economics, dating back to at least before Adam Smith. That is, why is it that countries with seemingly similar economies and institutions can display radically different savings behavior? Now, many brilliant economists have spent their entire lives working on this question, and as a field, we've made a tremendous amount of headway and done a lot about this. What I'm here to talk with you about today is an intriguing new hypothesis and some surprisingly powerful new findings that I've been working on about the link between the structure of the language you speak and how you find yourself with the propensity to save. Let me tell you a little bit about savings rates, a little bit about language, and then I'll draw that connection. Let's start by thinking about the member countries of the OECD, or the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. OECD countries, by and large, you should think about these as the richest, most industrialized countries in the world. And by joining the OECD, they were affirming a common commitment to democracy, open markets, and free trade. Despite all of these similarities, we see huge differences in savings behavior. So all the way over on the left of this graph, what you see is many OECD countries saving over a quarter of their GDP every year, and some OECD countries saving over a third of their GDPs per year. Holding down the right flank of the OECD, all the way on the other side is Greece. And what you can see is that over the last 25 years, Greece has barely managed to save more than 10% of their GDP. It should be noted, of course, that the United States and the UK are next in line. Now that we see these huge differences in savings rates, how is it possible that language might have something to do with these differences? Let me tell you a little bit about how languages fundamentally differ. Linguists and cognitive scientists have been exploring this question for many years now. And then I'll draw the connection between these two behaviors. Many of you have probably already noticed that I'm Chinese. I grew up in the Midwest of the United States, and something I realized quite early on was that the Chinese language forced me to speak about, and in fact, more fundamentally than that, so slightly forced me to think about family in very different ways. Now, how might that be? Let me give you an example. Suppose I were talking with you and I was introducing you to my uncle. You understood exactly what I just said in English. If we were speaking Mandarin Chinese with each other, though, I wouldn't have that luxury, right? I wouldn't have been able to convey so little information. What my language would have forced me to do, instead of just telling you this is my uncle, is to tell you a tremendous amount of additional information. My language forced me to tell you whether or not this was an uncle on my mother's side or my father's side, whether this was an uncle by marriage or by birth, and if this man was my father's brother, whether he was older than or younger than my father. All of this information is obligatory. Chinese doesn't let me ignore it. And in fact, if I want to speak correctly, Chinese forces me to constantly think about it. Now, that fascinated me endlessly as a child, but what fascinates me even more today as an economist is that some of these same differences carry through to how languages speak about time. So for example, if I'm speaking in English, I have to speak grammatically differently if I'm talking about past rain, it rained yesterday, current rain, it is raining now, or future rain, it will rain tomorrow. Notice that English requires a lot more information with respect to the timing of events. Why? Because I have to consider that and I have to modify what I'm saying to say it will rain or it's going to rain. It's simply not permissible in English to say it rained tomorrow. In contrast to that, that's almost exactly what you would say in Chinese. A Chinese speaker can basically say something that sounds very strange to an English speaker's ears. They can say, yesterday it rained, now it rained, tomorrow it rained. In some deep sense, Chinese doesn't divide up the time spectrum in the same way that English forces us to constantly do in order to speak correctly. Is this difference in languages only between very, very distantly related languages like English and Chinese? Actually, no. So many of you know in this room that English is a Germanic language. What you may not have realized is that English is actually an outlier. It is the only Germanic language that requires this. For example, most other Germanic language speakers feel completely comfortable talking about rain tomorrow by saying morgen regnet es. Quite literally to an English ear, it rained tomorrow. This led me to, as a behavioral economist, to an intriguing hypothesis. Could how you speak about time, could how your language forces you to think about time affect your propensity to behave across time? You speak English, a future language, And what that means is that every time you discuss the future or any kind of a future event, grammatically, you're forced to cleave that from the present and treat it as if it's something viscerally different. Now, suppose that that visceral difference makes you suddenly disassociate the future from the present every time you speak. That's true, and it makes the future feel like something more distant and more different from the present. That's going to make it harder to save. If, on the other hand, you speak a futureless language, the present and the future, you speak about them identically. If that suddenly nudges you to feel about them identically, that's going to make it easier to save. Now, this is a fanciful theory. You know, as a professor, I get paid to have fanciful theories. But how would you actually go about testing such a theory? Well, what I did with Ed was to access the linguistics literature. And interestingly enough, there are pockets of futureless language speakers situated all over the world. This is a pocket of futureless language speakers in Northern Europe. Interestingly enough, when you start to crank the data, these pockets of futureless language speakers all around the world turn out to be, by and large, some of the world's best savers. Just to give you a hint of that, let's look back at that OECD graph that we were talking about. What you see is these bars are systematically taller and systematically shifted to the left compared to these bars, which are the members of the OECD that speak future languages. What is the average difference here? 5 percentage points of your GDP saved per year. Over 25 years, that has huge long-run effects on the wealth of your nation. Now, while these findings are suggestive, countries can be different in so many different ways that it's very, very difficult sometimes to account for all of these possible differences. What I'm going to show you, though, is something that I've been engaging in for a year, which is trying to gather all of the largest data sets that we have access to as economists. And I'm going to try and strip away all of those possible differences, hoping to get this relationship to break, right? And just in summary, no matter how far I push this, I can't get it to break. Let me show you how far you can do that. One way to imagine that is I gather large data sets from around the world. So for example, there's the Survey of Health and Retirement in Europe. From this data set, you actually learn that retired European families are extremely patient with survey takers. So imagine that you're a retired household in Belgium, someone comes to your front door. Excuse me, would you mind if I peruse your stock portfolio? Do you happen to know how much your house is worth? Do you mind telling me? Would you happen to have a hallway that's more than 10 meters long? If you do, would you mind I timed how long it took you to walk down that hallway? Would you mind squeezing as hard as you can in your dominant hand this device so I can measure your grip strength? How about blowing into this tube so I can measure your lung capacity? Right? The survey takes over a day. Combine that, okay, with the demographic and health survey collected by USAID in developing countries in Africa, for example, which that survey actually can go so far as to directly measure the HIV status of families living in, for example, rural Nigeria. Combine that with the World Value Survey, which measures the political opinions, unfortunately for me, the savings behaviors of millions of families in hundreds of countries around the world. Take all of that data, combine it, and this map is what you get. What you find is 9 countries around the world that have significant native populations, which speak both futureless and future languages. And what I'm going to do is form statistical matched pairs between families that are nearly identical on every dimension that I can measure. Okay? And then I'm going to explore whether or not the link between language and savings holds even after controlling for all of these levels. What are the characteristics to control for? Well, I'm going to match families on country of birth and residence, the demographics with sex, their age, their income level within their own country, their educational achievement, a lot about their family structure. It turns out there are 6 different ways to get married in Europe. And most granularly, I break them down by religion, where there are 72 categories of religions in the world, so extreme level of granularity. There are 1.4 billion different ways that a family can find itself. Okay, now, effectively, everything I'm going to tell you from now on is only comparing these basically nearly identical families. It's getting as close as possible to the thought experiment of finding 2 families, both of whom live in Brussels, right, who are identical on every single one of these dimensions, but one of whom speaks Flemish and one of whom speaks French. Or 2 families that live in a rural district in Nigeria, one of whom speaks Hausa and one of whom speaks Igbo. Now, even after all of this granular level of control, do futureless language speakers seem to save more? Yes. Futureless language speakers, even after this level of control, are 30% more likely to report having saved in any given year. Does this have cumulative effects? Yes. By the time they retire, futureless language speakers holding constant their income are going to retire with 25% more in savings. Can we push this data even further? Yes, because we actually collect a lot of health data as economists. Now, how can we think about health behaviors to think about savings? Well, think about smoking, for example. Smoking is in some deep sense negative savings, right? If savings is current pain in exchange for future pleasure, smoking is just the opposite. It's current pleasure in exchange for future pain. What we should expect then is the opposite effect, and that's exactly what we find. Futureless language speakers are 20 to 24% less likely to be smoking in a given point in time compared to identical families, and they're going to be 13 to 70% less likely to be obese by the time they retire, and they're going to report being 21% more likely to have used a condom in their last sexual encounter. I could go on and on with the list of differences that you could find. It's almost impossible not to find a savings behavior for which this strong effect isn't present. My linguistics and economics colleagues at Yale and I are just starting to do this work and really explore and understand the ways that these subtle nudges cause us to think more or less about the future every single time we speak. Ultimately, the goal, once we understand how these subtle effects can change our decision making, we want to be able to kind of provide people tools so that they can consciously make themselves better savers and more conscious investors of their own future. Thank you very much.
All right. So I guess we can start just going through. Did anyone write down any words they weren't sure about and want to ask for definition of or anything?
I'll say I could maybe barely understand 17% because the video is lagging. I cannot see clearly the mouse, so it's
okay.
If there's only voice, it's hard for me to understand everything.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. I'll try to figure out why that might have been happening. I'm sorry that was lag. Did anyone else have trouble with the video speed and audio matching?
Actually, I can't totally follow the speed. So
Okay.
yes.
All right, I'll try to figure that out then for next time. Sorry about that. So that definitely would have made an additional challenge. Did anything in particular stand out that you want to ask about?
I have a question. Can we get the subtitle of the video? Then we can figure out which word we. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have the subtitle file for this video right now, but I can. What I can do, I'll ask Andrew. Maybe I can get your emails or something. I can send you a transcript, so it'll just be a written copy of the entire video. So that maybe is something you can review, and that will help.
Or maybe like English subtitle, and then it's more easy for me to follow up.
Sure. I will do that for next time. I did not have that with this particular talk, but with others, I will. I think next time I'll play it in the video so it can use the subtitles that are.
Okay, thank you.
I downloaded this. Yeah, sorry. So there were a few words that I had made notes about that I thought we could cover in case they weren't something you were familiar with. So is everyone familiar with the word headway? Does that make sense, or was that a new word?
Headway, what is headway?
So headway, when he was talking about making headway with something, it means making progress.
Headway, HEAD way.
Yeah, HEAD. So just like your head.
Headway. Okay.
Yeah, it's all one word though. And maybe I'll actually send these words in the chat to make this a little easier? Where's the chat?
Or maybe you can like use a whiteboard. I don't know. Is there any whiteboard you can use?
I am not. I don't have one behind me. I will get one. For now, I'm just going to use the chat because I don't see.
Or you can share your screen, and maybe in your screen you can use a whiteboard.
This word headway.
No, it's one word, I think.
Yeah, headway is one word. So I'm just going to real quickly make a new document here. Don't get the answers as I do this.
Progress.
All right, so let me go ahead and share this. Okay, so it's just a Word document that I brought up. Is that visible for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we covered headway. So we said that means to make progress.
Mm-hmm.
How about the word intriguing?
Not sure.
Any guesses, maybe?
Intrigue. Provoke.
Yeah, in some way, yes. Anyone else have any thoughts or guesses? Nothing. Kevin, do you have a guess?
Interesting.
Yeah, good. So I would say the simplest way to define intriguing would be interesting. It can be used a little bit differently in different situations. So if you use just the word as a noun, intrigue, that would usually mean a little bit more like a mystery. But yeah, as a verb, intriguing generally means interesting. Good. How about nudges or nudge? He used it in the plural form, but any guesses? Jasmine, do you have any thoughts?
No.
No. Okay. So a nudge would be like a gentle push. So it would be more like if you kind of used your elbow to bump the person next to you just lightly to let them know something. That's like a nudge. If you're nudging someone towards something, which is how it was used in the video, it means kind of gently pushing them towards something. So maybe not physically. If you're nudging someone towards an idea, you're maybe giving them little thoughts to get them to start thinking with the new idea. So it can be used in several different contexts, but essentially it means to kind of gently push someone towards something. Excuse me. What about crisis? That might be easier. I don't know. Jinyu, do you know what that is?
Yeah, it means something like catastrophe, right?
Yeah. Catastrophe would be a pretty good one-word definition for that. Like some kind of like very intense danger or difficult situation, like the pandemic. I think many people would have considered that to be a crisis of sorts. An earthquake could be a crisis if it creates a lot of damage. So these very intense, difficult situations.
Is it similar to like disaster?
Yes. Disaster, I guess I mean, yeah, yes, it is. That's the short answer. I think in English, contextually, disaster would maybe refer to, it could be used a little bit more broadly, whereas crisis is usually a very acute, it's a very intense and immediate kind of situation that it almost demands like as quick a resolution as possible. So yeah, they're very similar. I don't want to confuse it. We'll leave that as yeah, catastrophe or disaster. I'll even add that on here. How about propensity?
I think one word is similar, proclivity, right?
I'm sorry, what word?
Proclivity. Proclivity.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Proclivity. Proclivity.
Huh?
Oh, okay, proclivity. I think somewhat similar, maybe a little bit different though.
Oh, I see. Oh, I learned those two words from GRE.
Okay. Oh, do you have maybe a guess?
Propensity. The propensity, maybe it refers to the link to something,
In
link
some way.
toward something.
So I would say like the simplest definition probably would be tendency.
Tendency, yeah. Tendency.
So, or some kind of like natural inclination. So if you have inclination, these all mean about the same thing. Inclination can mean an incline, right? Like it's leaning. An inclination within a person would be leaning towards something. If you're inclined towards climbing, like we had talked about mountain climbing a little before, then it's something kind of natural inside you that makes you feel drawn towards that. Like it's something to want to do. So he was discussing, Kevin in the video was discussing the propensity towards savings. And he was saying it's kind of our natural tendency or our natural drive, if you want to say maybe, but it's kind of naturally feeling like we should be saving. So it's leaning towards a particular way of doing things, or a natural interest, I guess you could say. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. How about visceral? You won't hear this word too often, but it's a good word. This is probably difficult, I think. Visceral is like, does it make sense if I say at a gut level? This might be using just another English idiom, so I'm not sure if it will actually help when I say that. So, I'll say at a base level. So, visceral generally refers to your gut, like your stomach, in terms of the body. But when you talk about something being visceral or at a visceral level, it is essentially saying it's something that's very deep within us. That's a natural, deep kind of trait or part of us. I feel like now I close it up. Okay, let me very quickly jump back to the video and see if I can find that part, because I think it will help.
So how did the speaker use this word?
That's what I'm going to try to find, if I can remember where. I'm trying to remember where he said it. I'm going to see if I can just very quickly. This might take a moment. Let me. So I guess an example.
So maybe he was talking about if you use the futureless language, saving is the visceral instinct of yours.
You're right, and it makes sense either way. So even if that wasn't exactly what he said, I think that's a good example of how you can use it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's it's more than like propensity is kind of, it's a natural inclination. Visceral really means it's getting at the core of it, the root. So to have a visceral tendency would just mean it's just a part of you. It's part of who you are. So when he was talking about at a visceral level, you have this language impacting the way you behave. He's saying it's all kind of wrapped together. It's a part of how it works, just at a very fundamental level. So by itself, visceral kind of refers to your core. In the terms of a body, you can think of your gut or your stomach, kind of the core of your body. In a greater context, visceral kind of means the core of maybe an idea you're discussing or some kind of behavior that happens just as a part of who we are. It's the human need for food is a visceral need, right? That's just, we're human, we have to eat. That's just part of it. So that's what it means. It's a very core, fundamental part of something. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes, totally.
Okay, cool. And then the last word that I picked out was granular. Can anyone guess? There's a similar word to this that maybe you've heard elsewhere, granule. So at a granular level is how he was describing it.
Granular level. Granular means that the sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think that would mean the way he used it?
Granular level. So break a concept down deeply.
Yes. So right. So if we're using sand as an example, one granule of sand is one little speck of sand, one little piece. So you'll usually hear this term with very fine, very very small things, like sugar there's granules of sugar. So exactly, good job, Owen. At a granular level, we're talking about getting down to a very, very fine level of detail. So he was talking about the families and the differences in families, and he wanted to compare two families that were very, very, very similar to see if it was only the language that was having an impact. And so he described it as examining it at a granular level, because he was going through all these different levels of classification and getting it to be just as similar as possible in that case. So yeah, granular would be at a very, very detailed level, at a very small scale level. Good. Were there any other words that maybe you caught that I didn't write down that were that you'd like to ask about?
No, the thing is that if we cannot pick up a word we didn't recognize. You know what I mean? If we hear a word that we don't understand, we just skip it.
Okay. I would encourage you to write it down or make a note. And in future videos, I'll have the
because there is no subtitle, so
yeah.
We cannot write it down.
I understand. Okay. That will be fixed, and I apologize again. What about the concepts, some of the ideas that he was discussing? were there any
Yeah.
questions?
No, there's a movie almost exactly talk about this concept. Arrival.
Oh, sure.
The movie called Arrival.
Yeah,
Have you seen it?
I have.
Yeah, the movie talked about it's I think not language but the words, right?
Communication, I think. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
with the alien words, using alien words, you can somehow peek a little about future. That's what that movie says. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it was discussing, I think, how language can kind of gives us clues into culture or behavior or, you know, how we live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good example. It was a good
And
movie.
and there's another very obvious example. We Chinese, like Eastern culture, we value the age. We take very big concern about age. So like in English, there's only brother, but no brothers, you can tell who's older, right? But in Mandarin, we the old brother and little brother is totally different words.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
In school, we call senior. There's a word we can call senior, like 学长, like big brother in school, if you translate into English. Yeah, but in English, there's no such words.
Good. So that's, yeah, and I actually wondered, I mean, when he was explaining the way that Chinese is different from English, is that something do you agree with what he was saying, or do you find it a little bit different? Because I mean, the video is a little bit, it's not old, but it's a little older. So I wonder if it's still, if you think it's true, or if there's maybe some things that you find different. Kevin, what do you think? Do you think everything that he was saying is accurate in terms of what you have found with differences in Chinese and English, or are there other things that you have found?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he said the Chinese the Chinese vocabulary, it gives the speakers that has a lot of meaning about the vocabulary. So when he says like 姨丈, we can know it's not just uncle, it's your aunt's your aunt's husband. So yeah, I pretty agree with what him say, but I'm not sure about the saving habits with the future or past sentence. I mean, I think it's not just about the language. There's more. I mean, there's more things to influence the saving habits. Yeah.
Sure. Jasmine, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the futureless language and the future language. I'm thinking that the future language like emphasize the future, the things will happen in future, so people don't really pay more attention about this because it will happen in future, not now. So maybe they will like buy something or like use money or in advance, I mean. And the futureless, people may think it's not emphasize the thing will happen in future, so people may don't how to say this, may think that it will like influence now, maybe.
Sure.
So they may like to use some save something, so
Sure.
to avoid something happening in future, because it's, yes. I think maybe
So-
this is the reason why futureless language, people who use the futureless language will save more money than people who use future language.
Do you believe that is like in your own life? Is that something that you see, that you agree with, or do you find things to be a little bit different?
So
Actually,
Jake,
I didn't realize the big difference between futureless and the future language. I think
so
there's
Jake,
some
Jasmine,
Jack, let me ask you. You're American, right? So so do you think that do you feel do you do you think that do you notice that the future money is cheaper than is less in value than present money?
So yeah, I mean, in economics, it kind of teaches us that, right? Like the future value of money.
Yeah, but before that.
So can you maybe just reword the question? Are you asking if people consider money in the future to be more valuable than money now, or?
No. I mean, before you study before you studied economics, do you have conscious that future money is less in value than present money?
So invaluable means very valuable. It's a weird word. So are you saying the future money is more valuable or less valuable than?
No. Less valuable.
Less valuable.
Future money is, yeah.
No, but I think this is, as Kevin was saying, and personally I agree. I think there's a lot more that goes into our views of money than just language. So I mean, the way I was raised as a child and our own cultures can, I think, also play a role. I was brought up in my home to understand that there is a value to saving money. For future purchases we may want that cost a lot more, or to have things in case something happens, for security, for safety. So personally, I was taught that it's maybe not as important as the money. Like it is a different, it is different, right? Like money to have in the future is as a child, I had a little bit of, it's something that you don't want to think about, maybe, because if I have a little bit of money and I want to go buy a toy, I want to go buy that toy today. Like I don't want to wait a year to get that toy. So I was told, well, look, you can get a better toy if you keep saving your money and not buy the little toy now. That was how I was taught to kind of think about it. So in that sense, maybe maybe the future money has more value to it because you can do more with it as you save, as you get more and more money over time. But there is, I do agree. I think there's a well, actually, this was actually another word that I should have maybe written down. He talked about cleaving the future from the present. Does the word cleave make sense?
Can you write it on the word?
Yeah.
Cleave.
So this might be a hint. This is an object, so it's a little bit different. But have you heard of a tool called a cleaver? It's not a commonly used word, especially now. In the past,
Cleaver.
Yeah.
Tools that cut the wheat.
Yes. Okay. So a cleaver cuts. So to cleave just means to cut. So when he was saying cleaving the future from the present, he was talking about making a very distinct separation, cutting between those and having that separation. I do feel that, at least in the US finance is weird. I think the more that I travel, the more I find like in the US, people love to use credit much more so than any other country I've found. People spend most of their lives in debt, owing money to banks, and that is considered normal there, which to me sounds crazy. You know, I mean, when you consider the way most people live. So I think in that culture, there is a much different view of future money versus present money, because, well, the future is uncertain and we don't really know what we're going to have then, but this is what we have now and this is what we can do with what we have now. So I think there is more of a focus on the present. It wasn't until just a few years ago that I started thinking about like retirement savings and the fact that, you know, the earlier you start saving money with compound interest, of course, that just gets bigger and bigger over time. But you can't think about it as I have this money now, because if you do, you're probably going to go spend it and not save it, right? So I think in the US there is a challenge for some people to kind of understand that the long-term value and how time can actually help, I guess, with financially if we're not spending now. Do you find in China that what he was saying in the video holds up, that it's true, or do you think people are just as likely to focus more on present spending than future savings there? Or in Taiwan or Hong Kong, I'm not trying to overgeneralize. Where you are living is what I mean to be saying. Where you live, do you find that to be true, or do you think there is still maybe more value placed on present spending?
Depends. I think it depends on like some people would like to, how to say, mortgage, 贷款,
Mortgage.
Mortgage.
Oh, okay.
mortgage. Some people will mortgage to buy something.
Sure.
But some people prefer to saving money and until the money is enough for them to afford something. Yes,
Right.
depends.
Okay.
I think the education background also plays a big role. Yeah, so for us, we're all studying finance related, so we know about the basic, economics. So we got more pretend on saving. But for those people who don't study economics or finance related, they might go, as she says, they might go to get mortgage and buy something they really, really not desperate needed and have a bad spending habits. So yes, so I don't think it's about the language. I think it's because the education.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, just very quickly, I'll mention in the US, they don't teach much in school. Unless you're studying business at university, you probably don't get much exposure to any kind of education relating to economics or finance or even personal finance. So I can see how that would play a role. Excuse me. Jinyu, what do you think?
Oh, I think it also depends 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 on the resource. Yeah. When I was serving my substudy military service, I was in Pingdong, a pretty countryside area. Yeah, and those are indigents, and they like to spend money on buying lots of things like iPod, iPad, iPhone. Yeah, and they use mortgage to do so. but they don't have money. They don't have salary
Right.
for a bank, but they have resource. Yeah.
Okay.
So once they are bankrupt, they just need to go to their home and then maybe have some ferns or maybe breed some. Oh, they have mango. They have lots of mango, so they can sell mango. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, even if they work hard, they still don't have too much money. So they just want to spend what they have. Yeah.
Okay. Phone, do you any other ideas?
Me?
Yeah.
Nope.
All right. We're actually almost out of time for today.
Yeah.
Before we end, were there any other questions or suggestions or anything? I'm gonna write this where you can see on the screen. Subtitles, videos, anything else that you would like me to note for the next class or future classes?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Oh, and I guess we mentioned there was a lag. So I'm gonna try to figure out why it's not my internet here, because that's plenty fast. I'll try to figure out what was happening and
Mhm.
it doesn't happen next time. Cool. Well, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys all have a good day, or I guess you're finished for work today. Well, some of you maybe not. Have a good
Thank
night
you.
shift.
Thank
Good
you, Jack. Have a
Yeah,
good day.
thank you, Jack.
No problem. And I'll see you guys again on Thursday, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Right.
Thursday. See you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
See you soon.
Take
See you
care.
soon.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.